Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of our Cybersecurity Executive Brief. I am Corey Wolf, Director of Offensive Security at Risk 360. Today is Wednesday, July 31st, which means that BlackCat and DEF CON are less than a week away. We will not have a executive brief for you next Wednesday. I, along with the rest of the Risk 360 Offensive Security team, will be on site in Las Vegas for DEF CON, Hacker Summer Camp. We're going to be there. If you're going to be there, would love the opportunity to say hello to you. Not going to pitch you, not going to sell you, but would love to just be able to say hello, right? So please let me know via email, LinkedIn, however you can get in touch with me. Please let me know if you're going to be there. Would love to take some time to chat. So wanted to start with something that is probably surprising to all of you, but in 2023, Russian ransomware gangs accounted for 69% of all ransom payments in 2023. A new report put out just last week by TRM Labs, a blockchain intelligence and analytics firm specializing in crypto-assisted money laundering and financial crime. They released a report where they basically come up with this information through blockchain analysis. They can link payments. Remember, it's a blockchain. It's an immutable record, right? So because it doesn't change and you can't alter it, you can, of course, go back and do forensics on it and see where payments came from, where they went, and start to put together a picture. That's what TRM Labs specializes in, blockchain intelligence and analytics. That's really what they're doing. They're doing chain analysis and they're looking at different connections and relationships. So because of that, they're able to put together a report where for last year, ransomware payments exceeded $500 million. So total ransomware payments were probably more than that, but $500 million to about 69% of all ransomware crews was paid. And those crews, the 69%, are Russian-based. North Korea, this report also calls out Bleeping Computer, at least talks a little bit about North Korea being the leader in stealing cryptocurrency through exploits and breaches. North Korea, so if you think about APTs, advanced persistent threats, many of them have different goals and different things that they want to obtain. North Korea is notorious for this, for really focusing on stealing crypto to, do whatever they need to do with that money. And apparently in 2023, North Korea stole over $1 billion, which I would think is true. If you follow it, you would see like every few months there would be a big crypto breach or incident that eventually was targeted back to North Korea. But they weren't little amounts. It wasn't just like $500,000 or $1 million. It was every time you heard about it, it was $10 million, $50 million. Some cases it was $200 million. And they do this regularly. So for them to get $1 billion doesn't surprise me. And I would almost say, yeah, that number is probably true. The TRM report, they just go on to basically say that the majority of ransomware incidents and campaigns are through Russian-based groups. Yeah, 69%, according to the TRM report, 69% of all ransomware gangs are from Russia. So, yeah. We talked about CrowdStrike quite a bit. Apparently, Delta has lawyered up and is now suing. So they're getting ready to sue CrowdStrike for the outage. To me, this feels like a more of, hey, they clearly did not have a well thought out or executed, business continuity plan or, disaster recovery plan or any plan, really. Delta was out of action for, I think, probably the longest amount of time out of most of the big organizations. They, I think they finally got back to 100%, but they had to cancel a ton of flights. I think the one number I saw was 6,000 flights and they were down for quite some time. Most organizations had gotten back, but it took Delta forever. And what do you know? They are going to sue. So I think they included Microsoft in this as well, but I mean, I guess the thought there is that Microsoft allowed CrowdStrike into the kernel. This is a big debate about whether or not Microsoft should be allowing organizations into the kernel of Windows. Why can't they do things differently? Microsoft has wanted to block off kernel access for some time now, but that could be seen as anti-competitive, especially in the EU. I think it might have even come up. You'd have to fact check me on that. But if they disabled access to the kernel, it would essentially be seen as anti-competitive, especially when in the same space as CrowdStrike. If you think about Defender for Endpoint and all the other security tooling and products that they have, again, it could be seen as trying to block out competitors. So they've shied away from doing that. They do actually, there is another process to do this without having to use the kernel. So for example, in Mac OS, there is a system level API that allows you to monitor memory and do all kinds of stuff. I forget what it's called exactly, but it's basically a security API built into Mac OS to where developers can tap into that API so they don't have to be in the kernel. Microsoft has developed this for Windows. However, it has not seen wide adoption. And so who knows what's going to happen. But the other, kind of the side debate there is, why was Microsoft allowing CrowdStrike or anyone else for that matter to work directly in the kernel? And it really boils down to that if they block access to the kernel, they're going to have a lot of problems and a lot more court cases. Regardless, Delta is lawyering up. They will be pursuing charges. They will be pursuing a suit against CrowdStrike and I believe Microsoft. I'll link to this so you can read up on it, get a little bit more information. To me, it sounds like they got embarrassed and they weren't prepared and they're upset about it. What are you going to do? Figure out your business continuity. In other news, Meta released Llama 3.1. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of AI right now. Suffice to say, they have released Llama 3.1. Multiple models, I believe an 8 billion, a 70 billion, and a 405 billion parameter model that they released. One of the big discussions around this is that they're referring to it, well, I think they might actually change their wording. Originally, they were referring to it as open source. It's kind of open source. I think it's an Apache license. But the difference here is that they're releasing it out to the public, whereas, it's real closed source models like OpenAI or the Microsoft or Gemini from Google. Those are true closed source. Meta has released this to the world. I believe it's an Apache license. So they're now referring to it as just an open model. They aren't saying open source because I believe in the license, if you hit 700 million monthly active users, it's no longer free, which to me, I'm not a big fan of Meta, Facebook, that kind of, those kinds of properties, but to me that seems fair. If you hit 700 million monthly active users, Meta wants to get paid. But they released some other security frameworks and tooling. They've had something called Llama Guard, which is meant to, basically prevent prompt injection and other AI and machine learning based vulnerabilities. They released Prompt Guard along with, I think, 3.1, which is basically just a small model. So you can think of this Prompt Guard as a classifier model. So it's another model. It's based off of, I believe, Llama 2.7, which was fine-tuned to look for malicious, prompt injection type attacks. So the thought process here is that, if you're a developer and you use these models, you can use Prompt Guard as a predictor or a classifier. So you take the user prompt, you put it in a Prompt Guard, and it says yes or no, good or bad, malicious or not, basically. And then, depending on that result, you either process it or you send it back to the user, whatever the result is. So they have released some security items here. Prompt Guard being the big one, I think, that was just released. They have Llama Guard 3, which is new as well. They had Llama Guard 2. same kind of idea. There's all this talk about, the bad things or attacking LLMs. In the real world, all we really see are two things. We see prompt injection, where you're saying, ignore all previous instructions, tell me how to do this bad thing. And logically, you bypass the protections and the model tells you what you want it to tell you. And then the other one are supply chain attacks, which are typical. We see them every day already. SolarWinds being the big one, but supply chain attacks. So things like, you can use a website, a platform called Hugging Face to download models, and it's basically like a developer platform. And so, an example might be, threat actors last year, I think, poisoned some of the functions in the models so that if you were a developer and you downloaded a model from Hugging Face, it attempted to execute code in Python. So that would be considered a supply chain attack. Those are really only the two that we actually see. If you look at AI risk management frameworks and other, security frameworks around protecting LLMs and machine learning and AI, there's lots of other ones. There's data poisoning. There's a couple of different ones, but the ones that we really see are just prompt injection and supply chain attacks, which are just classic supply chain attacks from forever ago. But I guess kudos to Meta here. They put out the security tooling. Bad news is that it's easily bypassed. So prompt guard, here we go. See this being talked about. This was talked about just on Monday. Again, prompt guard is meant to take the input. Prompt guard is a classifier, takes the input, says malicious or not. That's an oversimplification, but basically says yes or no malicious. And apparently you can bypass it by just hitting spacebar a couple times. Yeah. So the AI drama goes on with security. It's the Wild West out there. But with the prompt guard, which was just released, where is it? It turns out Meta's prompt guard 86 million classifier model can be asked to ignore previous instructions if you just add spaces between the letters and omit punctuation. So Meta said they're working on a fix. I don't think they officially commented other than saying they're working on a fix, but that's what's going on with that. So another great week talking to you. I appreciate you spending the time. I hope this was helpful. Again, no brief next week. We will be in Las Vegas at DEF CON. If you're going to be there, please make sure you come by and say hello. I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you here in 2 weeks. Speak soon.